Hello and welcome to the Black Hat Bushcraft channel. Today I wanted to give you a close look at a really important wild plant to know, and that is purslane. Also, people refer to it as Portulaca. Purslane is so important to know because it is such a nutritious wild edible plant. Here in the United States, most people refer to it as a weed, whereas in other places, many other places in the world, it's actually cultivated to use as a food source because it is so nutritious. It is a very widely dispersed plant, so most likely you probably have it in your area. And in my area right now, it's growing really well this time of year. The plants have grown big, the stems are very thick, and the leaves are also very thick and succulent and contain all those nutrients. So right now is a really good time to utilize this plant as the food source. I was out today and I was going to pick up some and munch on it, so I thought I'd give you a quick look while I was doing that. In case you haven't seen it, this will help you better identify some purslane in your area so you can start to utilize that too. So stick with me and we'll get zoomed in. You can see here how much of this purslane is growing. Some nice wood sorrel. That'd be a good edible to go with it. But it's just all the way down this field line. There's just tons of it. It's just growing everywhere. All that you want and more. Alright, this is a really good example of a purslane plant here. And this one is medium sized, I'd say, and you can see that even with it being a mature plant, the plant is growing outward and not upward. So if you ever spot a plant that has like a stem coming up, that's definitely not going to be purslane. The plant only continues to grow outward. I went ahead and pulled off a leaf here from the plant so you could get a better look at it. If you're familiar with a jade plant, which is a popular ornamental plant that a lot of people keep, it reminds me of that in several ways. One, the color of the leaf has a dark green color to it. The shape of the leaf also, I guess it's somewhat of a teardrop shaped leaf. And also the fact that it's a succulent leaf. So if you feel of it, it has like a plumpness to it as a succulent leaf. If you're to break into that leaf, on the inside it has almost like a mucilaginous quality. Hopefully you can see on my hand that wetness there, slightly slick. And the most important thing to note if you break into one of these leaves is the fact that that liquid is clear, that it's not a milky or white color, but it's very clear. All right, so that's what the leaves look like. I did go ahead and break off a stem as well so you could see the leaf pattern. I kind of messed that up a little bit here for you, but the leaves alternate. So there's a leaf here and then a little further down on the opposite side they're alternating that way. At the end of the limb, you can see here, it has a kind of a cluster of leaves. And you'll notice that sometimes where it branches off, it'll create little clusters. Almost like a flower, but they are just leaves. So that's what that stem and leaf pattern looks like. Alright, I should mention that purslane does have blooms to it, and the flowers have 5 petals. And most of the time when you see purslane in bloom in the wild, it'll be yellow. Although all the samples that I've seen in bloom in my area are hot pink, which is a really pretty plant. Right here is a pre-bloom. This will probably bloom sometime tomorrow morning. And this plant's loaded down with these little pre-blooms right here at the end of their, where the stem comes out and it ends with that cluster. That's where the flowers will be. But it's not in bloom all day. So that's something that you may see or you may not catch it. And it's not something I would depend on to identify the plant. But just be aware that you may see it with those blooms. And I've seen, again, yellow and hot pink as this sample is right here. Alright, whenever you go to harvest your purslane, there's 2 parts of the plant that you want to focus on. One is the leaves and 2 is the stem. Personally, I like the leaves best. Whenever you pull up a piece of purslane, you want to make sure that you clean that off really good. Because being a low-lying plant, a lot of times when it rains, it'll splash dirt up that'll stick to the bottom side of the plant. So you want to make sure that you get all the dirt out of the way. When you eat the leaves, has a little bit of a sour flavor in the beginning when you first bite it and chew it in your mouth. And on the back side, it has a little bit of a bitter flavor. But all in all, it's pleasant compared to some wild edibles I've had. It's probably not my favorite. It's not quite as sour and tasty as like wood sorrel, but it's along the same lines. The nice thing is the texture. I really like the texture of those leaves. When you bite them, they have a crunch to them, and they have a lot of juice inside, which is probably where a lot of the nutrients are. Alright, if you eat the stems, they tend to have more of a bitter flavor to them, and they're a little bit more stringy than the leaves. So texture's not quite as good, and to me the flavor's not quite as good. They almost have a slight saltiness to them, but more of a bitter flavor that comes out when you chew it. Alright, if you do any reading or research on Purslane and its nutritional value, you're going to find that it has a lot of different really important nutrients in it. Things like vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, beta carotene. It's rich in antioxidants. And one thing that's very rare for a plant altogether is it's rich in omega-3 fatty acids. So when you're consuming Purslane, you're going to be getting some nutrients from that you're not going to get from any other plants. And that is part of the reason why it's such an important one to know. Alright, just a quick recap of some of the things we talked about with Purslane. Number one, remember what the leaves look like, what the color and texture was. They're succulent, so they're thick. Remember that if you break them, the sap inside has a little bit of a mucilaginous quality and is clear. Remember that the stems are reddish or brownish, and they should always be slick, never hairy. Remember that the leaves cluster at the end of each of the stems, and that the leaves are alternating up the stem. Also remember the visual of the plant, that it is more of a rosette type plant and it's low-lying and it never grows up. If you find all of these qualities, most likely you'll be finding Purslane. Just remember too that you may see it in bloom or it may not be in bloom. And if it is in bloom, those flowers are most likely yellow or pink and they'll be 5-petaled flowers. Those are all distinct qualities that you can use to identify Purslane. Alright, I'd like to thank you guys for taking the time to tune in for this quick look at what I believe is a very important wild edible plant. Remember, I'm not an expert where it comes to wild edible plants, and therefore you should never just consult my videos as a way to identify any wild edible plant. You should always confirm plants that you're looking at to use as food or medicine in at least 3 ways or with 3 trusted resources. And I always recommend that you consult a local expert in your area so that they can inform you positive identification of the plant and any risks associated with using it on your skin or in your body as a food source. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I look forward to talking to you with another video as soon as possible. And until then, take care and God bless.